warm welcome to the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. It's the Novatech Stage 2, which takes the peloton from Murray Bridge to Birdwood. Beautiful backdrop, but it is a challenging day, particularly for the sprinters, as it is predominantly uphill. Matthew Keenan with you, joined by former points race world champion Kate Bates and former world hour record holder Bridie O'Donnell. Kate, the weather today, 17.3 degrees, light winds of 17 kilometres per hour. The temperatures are low. That makes for aggressive racing. The wind can always be a factor, and that can provide the non-climbers with a great chance to put some pressure on those that like the hills.
Well, it's very mild. It's very unusual for Adelaide in January, and the Europeans often come out here and they really struggle with the heat, and often that adds a real advantage to the Australians, you know, who are a bit acclimatised over the Australian summer and the heat. Not this time. I think it will be a hard stage. I think it'll be a lot more open than years past. Everybody saw how well Chloe Hosking is going, how well she's sprinting. Nobody in their right mind would sit around and just give her another sprint finish. So I expect an aggressive stage.
She was the favourite going into the stage yesterday, Chloe Hosking, and Bridie, she delivered in emphatic fashion.
She was so pumped, wasn't she? First win with the new team, points on the UCI rankings now. And one of the quotes she made was, "I'm just really happy to give my team back a UCI win." So she can see now the value that she's bringing to the team and to the young riders in that group.
Let's take a look at the highlights from the Zip Track Stage 1, which was a day where the sprinters were expected to steal the show, and that's exactly what they did. 94 riders on the start line, 21 nationalities represented, and all the national champions from the race. Right at the front of the grid, the American national champion Ruth, one of the pre-race favourites, the defending champion Amanda Spratt, lining up in the Australian colours. The first intermediate sprint for the Zip Track sprint classification, it was Gracie Alvin showing herself early before we saw the first serious attack of the day.
This was a great move by the Swiss woman Van Mitzenberg, who ended up staying away then to take the QOM jersey for Subaru. She was pumped.
Then into the second of the intermediate sprints in Echunga, and Leah Kirschman in the red colours of Sunweb, making her intentions clear, looking for time bonuses as much as she was for points.
Well, last year the podium came down to time bonuses, and so the riders are all very aware of that. But what an incredible attack it was by Australia's Brodie Chapman riding for Francais de Jure. She took out that final sprint. The bunch, it was not without some incident, with a bit of a crash at the back. Justine Barrow on the right there, she went down very hard, broke her helmet. Hopefully she's back up and running today. Such a fast lead into the finish. Lotte Henthaler at the front with Trek-Segafredo, but look at the acceleration from Chloe Hosking.
Chloe Hosking, she timed her run to perfection. She used her teammates early. She got in the right position around the final corner. She then sat second wheel. She waited for a moment and she pounced. She used her experience. She used her horsepower. She collected the stage victory. Then she celebrated with her new teammates. For Chloe Hosking, this was one of the days where she was expected to win. That's exactly what she did. Novatech Stage 2, Murray Bridge through to Birdwood. This is a stage of some 114.9 kilometres. It starts at relatively low altitude and just gradually makes its way uphill. The first of the Zip Track intermediate sprints comes after just 28.5 kilometres, and getting there, Kate, the wind is expected to play a role.
There's some quite open roads on the way into that first sprint, and through Minato, the beautiful wildlife park there, Safari Park. The sprinting can mean too, I think after that, it's quite flat. It's more of the flatter part of the section. They've done a fair bit of climbing by that stage already, so I'm expecting that it might be a bit milder in this middle section, but maybe some fireworks at the beginning, and then at the end through Balhunna, Oakbank and onto Woodside. Woodside, one of the fire-affected areas in the Adelaide Hills. I know that community will be so happy to get the Tour Down Under through there, the San Remo feed zone. So they'll be collecting bottles, handing out food. It'll be quite a community event for them.
They then make their way through Birdwood for the second of the Zip Track sprints, where the points are up for grabs in terms of the battle for the points classification jersey, but the all-important time bonuses will play a role. And then with just 11 kilometres remaining, it is the one Queen of the Mountains point for the Subaru jersey, but 11 k's to go. This could be the launching pad.
The Santos Women's Tour Down Under hasn't been over Christmas Tree Ridge before, and we know Kimberly Conti, the race director, is really excited to see how it will affect the outcome of the race. So I can't wait to see how they navigate this climb.
And a technical approach to the finish line, 11 kilometres from the top of the climb to the finish. Could the breakaway on the climb maintain its advantage all the way through to the finish? This could be the decisive stage. Tomorrow it's off to Stirling. Today and tomorrow, 2 key moments in this stage. Let's take a look at what has happened so far in Novatech Stage 2. It was a firing of the gun to get them rolling. And as they roll out, wearing the leader's jersey, Chloe Hosking, with her teammates kind of around her, but Kate Bates, she's got one less teammate than everybody else on the rally squad.
Well, most of the women team, they start with 6 riders, but Rally have come here to Australia with 5. They've got quite a number of track riders on their team who are busy at the Milton World Cup for track cycling over in Canada at the moment. But Chloe, well, she didn't need too much support in the finish from her team. She just needed to be protected in the race and delivered to the finish, and I think that is what we can expect from Rally. They'll make the most of those 5.
The red flag coming in from the race director, Kimberly Conti, to get the stage underway. Calm at the beginning of the stage, but it didn't take too long before the peloton started to splinter underneath the pressure from the crosswinds, and as expected, they have played a part already in the stage.
We see now Sunweb and Mitchelton were the key teams are really breaking this race up, and the ochre jersey wearing Chloe was talking about the amount of wind and the impact it might have, and you can see then a great opportunity for Emily Herfoss to try and get an advantage, and she's then joined by Christina from Ale Cipollini. So as they were approaching that intermediate sprint, these 2 riders were hopeful that they might be able to get some much needed points and some bonus seconds.
And it was just inside the final few hundred metres that Emily Herfoss was caught. Anastasia Chersina, she managed to hold off. She collected maximum points, which moves her up in the Zip Track points classification. Significantly leading the peloton across the line in second position was Leah Kirschman. That puts her further up the table in terms of the points, but also a vital 2-second time bonus, moving her closer to Chloe Hosking. As we venture in across the famous vineyards of Adelaide, the weather conditions are ideal. For the riders, they don't get a chance, not yet anyway, to enjoy the vineyards. We might be able to a little later on. For now, we turn our attention to the bike race.
Well, we get to enjoy the views, certainly the beautiful aerials from the helicopter. And how good is it to be able to watch women's racing live and in this format with such beautiful pictures? Yesterday was an absolute first for women's cycling. It was the first ever Pro Series race that the women's peloton has had. It's the first time we've had a live broadcast here at the Women's Tour Down Under. And for Chloe Hosking, it was the first time she's won a Pro Series race, first time in a new team. Lots of firsts.
There were plenty of them. 63.3 kilometres remaining in this stage. From that first of the intermediate sprints, Lotte Hentala, who started the day in second place in the points classification, she went across the line in 5th position. That has given her enough points to move into the lead of that classification, just ahead of Chloe Hosking. And she wears the leader's jersey for that at the beginning of the stage on loan from Chloe. Is Lotte Hentala targeting the points classification more so than the general classification?
I think she's targeting the general classification, actually. And I think if you look at the tactics that Sunweb have taken with Leah Kirschman, they all believe across the board, Chloe Hosking included, she sprinted for some yesterday, that it really could affect the overall. If there aren't any successful breakaways, if they do all come down to bunch sprints, that could play a really big role overall. I also think we need to consider that the Europeans and Americans need to test their legs a bit. So the Australians have had the chance to race. Chloe Hosking, won another national title last week in the criterium, so she comes in on exceptional form. But Hentala from Finland, well, she's had a slightly different preparation, and she'll certainly be using each day to ride into more form. And I expect that each day we see a little bit more from her.
Bridie, we've already seen the peloton split up a couple of times in the crosswind. At one point, there was a group of 20 riders that had lost contact, and as they're on this stretch of road, covered by the trees, they've got a bit more protection. It's a wider road. We're seeing some of those caught at the back saying, this is my chance to move forward. I want a seat at the front of the classroom. Any
smart director would tell those riders, once you've made contact again with the peloton, your job is actually to get right back up to the front. And I was really pleased just before with the image we saw. We've got Rachel NEYLAN, who's arguably the leader or the captain of the Australian team, national team, riding there in front of her teammate Ruby Roseman Gannon. So in the white jersey with the green and gold and the black helmet. One of the younger riders, we've been really interested to see how she performed.
We can see the Mitchelton-Scott team moving themselves up towards the front as they go across this train line, and this is moving away from a section that is well protected, and it could be the Mitchelton-Scott team once again just turning the screws to see if they can put the peloton under a little bit of pressure. This is one of the key stages that they think that the general classification can be decided. We caught up with a few of the big favourites for the race before it got underway. Here are their thoughts on stage 2.
Stage 2, starting from Murray Bridge, I think we can expect it to be windy there, possible crosswinds and echelons, and after that I think it's just going to get harder and harder. We get into that final circuit around Birdwood and the road's just going up and down, dead roads, plenty of opportunities to attack and really take that race.
Stage 2 could be a really interesting one. It's not clear whether it could be a sprint or a breakaway or a sprint from a reduced bunch. There's a climb called Christmas Tree Ridge, I believe, that comes pretty close to the finish, and then you kind of still have some small rollers all the way to the line. So, you know, if it goes hard enough on that climb, I think you could see a really exciting finale there.
I think stage 2 can definitely be interesting. It might be a mixed bag if we get some crosswinds, especially some wind, especially from the south. Starting out at Murray Bridge, it's really open and wide open and exposed. So I remember 2 years ago we had really strong winds and everyone was really nervous at the start. So I think we can expect wind, and that just makes it a lot harder at the end. So with the climb up to Christmas Tree Ridge at just with 10k to go, I think that's probably where the defining point of the race will be. So we can look for the climbers to probably take some action there, so I'll definitely be looking out for that point in the race, and then finish into Birdwood, which is a town that I've ridden through I don't know how many times, so I know those roads pretty well, so I'm happy about that.
So stage 2, if it's going to be affected by crosswinds, I reckon put it in the gutter, see if there's some splits can be formed, and try not to make it a sprint.
Well, Brodie Chapman, the last rider that we heard from, she tried not to make it a sprint yesterday. But just prior to that was Rachel NEYLAN, who's been a silver medalist at the World Championships. And Kate, she spoke about how often she's ridden these roads, and the wind through her hair told the story of the day. How much of an advantage is it to have that home ground knowledge?
It's certainly good to just be comfortable on the roads, to know what's coming up without even having to use any mental energy to go over the course notes to try and remember and rehearse any of that. The wind, it's a really interesting one, Matt, because some of the riders, they love it, you know, especially the Dutch and Belgian riders in particular. When they see the wind is up, they relish that. There are a lot of riders that are quite scared by it, and that comes from a number of places. Firstly, physically, it's a lot tougher to ride in the wind. You have to position yourself in a good spot to be protected. Technically, it's also very difficult, and there's a lot of strategy that goes into, and experience that goes into riding well in the wind and protecting your team leader. For some of the national-based teams, some of the NRS teams, Specialised Women Racing is a good example, they haven't necessarily experienced the big international fields with the crosswind, so it will be interesting to see the push and shove between the more experienced riders versus the very talented but possibly less experienced teams.
Being polite is a real disadvantage in these sorts of conditions.
It is, but also you can see there's almost this agreement here in the peloton, which is people are starting to prepare for the San Remo feed station. They're getting themselves in order. So there's almost as though there's an unwritten rule that no one's attacking at the moment.
Well, that's a really good point. There is this etiquette, isn't there, Brodie? So going into the feed zone, I almost think it's self-explanatory, but you get a big old dirty black mark against your name if you attack through a feed zone. It's just not done. Sometimes there are breaks and gaps, and it's kind of a natural progression that the speed keeps going. But for anybody who chooses to make the move there, it's a little bit disrespectful. This is the one chance for the riders to refuel and rehydrate. Just because the conditions aren't too hot out there, you know, less than 20 degrees, it doesn't mean they don't still need that, and it's not a critical part of their race. And yeah, a lot of respect goes into it. It's kind of like cricket in that way.
Absolutely.
Unwritten rules.
Less heckling probably than cricket.
Well, yeah, slightly different crowd.
Also, other unwritten rules, of course, are not attacking when the Oka jersey has had a mechanical or a crash, for example. And we've seen some of those rules be, not adhered to by the riders, and you can sometimes see the older members of the bunch right up to her and say, listen, hey, I don't know if you're aware.
As the riders are making their way towards the San Remo past the feed zone, let's head back to the start line where we caught up with a few of the pre-stage favourites.
Oh yeah, I spent a lot of bickies, so I'll see what happens today, but I've got a really strong team around me, and like I said, the girls showed up yesterday, sleepy but 100% committed, so yeah, it was a good race. It was awesome to see Chloe with the classy win, and yeah, let's just have a good race today.
Yeah, I know it gives me a lot more confidence to aim. You know, we never would have aimed for a podium yesterday, just like a top 10. So yeah, it was really exciting. I just couldn't believe where I found myself yesterday, and yeah, it was a great race, but it was terrifying first 100 kilometres. The very first race of the Pro Tour season. I think there was a lot of nerves, there was a lot of touch wheels, there's a lot of high-pitched screams, and so I was actually probably the most comfortable in the last 5K when it came down to the sprint and started really stretching out. So yeah, I'll hopefully have another safe race today, and just really excited, so proud of the race that the Santos Tour Down is putting on for us. It's just really exciting for women's sport.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few teams that did nothing yesterday, so they were definitely saving their legs for today, and I know they've reconned the race, so I'm ready for them to have a go today, and we'll be following and really attentive, and yeah, it's up to them to try and get rid of me.
Chloe Hoskin has put the challenge on the table, I should say. Try and get rid of me. I dare you. But I've got two questions coming out of those interviews. Firstly, to you, Bright, in relation to Matilda Reynolds. She spoke about we're aiming for a top 10. She finished third on the stage. Does she undersell herself?
There's no doubt. I mean, she's clearly very talented. She rode so well in the Bay Criterium Series. She's raced in really well Shimano Crit Series in Australia. So, again, she said off air as well that, you know, she couldn't believe she was in third place coming around that final corner. What's happening? Why am I here? It shows that there's still possibly either a little bit of a lack of confidence and self-belief, or keeping a very realistic expectations. That's not a bad thing, but you're here in this amazing environment. You've got to give it everything.
Kate, what advice would you give her?
Back yourself. You know, there was a huge difference in demeanour between Matilda and Chloe. Yesterday before the stage, Chloe didn't say, oh, I think I can win, but we'll see how we go, I've got good legs. She said, I can win. You know, and today she did it again. It was kind of a not so veiled criticism that the other teams did nothing, and now good luck to them. You know, I mean, I love how sassy she is. She's got a bit of attitude, and it really plays in her favour. I actually think she probably intimidates some of the other riders, you know, because from a physical and a psychological perspective, she is so strong and so resilient, and everybody knows they have to do a lot to rattle her. And I think that's a big thing. Some of the less experienced sprinters get rattled quite easily, so even though they are capable, unless everything falls into place. But for Matilda to be in third wheel coming into the finish and actively thinking, what am I doing here? Well, she's already lost the race. At that point, she needs to go, I've got this, I can do this, and just commit to it, own it. I think we can see Matilda on the podium again. I hope she believes in it too.
Chloe is the kind of rider that she's not going to let you in. You have to beat her. The other question that came out of those interviews for me was the first interview with Brodie Chapman. She spoke about being in that break yesterday, and post the stage she said, just because it was on paper day for the sprinters doesn't mean you have to sit in the peloton for 100 kilometres waiting. We liked the move. It was entertaining. It was a bold move by Brodie yesterday. But does she pay a heavy price for that today?
No doubt, and there's only 3 long road stages and then the Kermesse on Sunday afternoon. But if this were a much longer tour, you can imagine that being in a solo break is not a very economical way to approach it. It takes a lot of your glycogen out of your muscles, so you don't have as much fuel for the next day.
This is Chloe now, number 81. She's the overall race leader. This is a course where Chloe can win the race overall. Kate, she's been spoken about, and she even talks herself down as a climber. But I sometimes think that is part of alleviating a little bit of pressure. She was 5th at the National Championships behind number 1 Amanda Spratt on Sunday. With the huge climb up Mount Banyong, she's a much better climber than she goes on the public record as.
Chloe's delightfully self-aware. You know, so she is critical of her climbing abilities, and when she says that, I think in her mind she's thinking of an Alpe d'Huez. She would never get up an Alpe d'Huez with the leaders. The shorter, sharper, punchier rides, absolutely. But she also knows that the onus is not on her to do any of the attacking. People will give her, you know, the ability to sit on for the day, and knowing that she's not responsible for forcing pace up the climbs. That really helps. On a day like today, it's uphill all day. There is a real rise in elevation, but there are no climbs so difficult or so long that Chloe can't be in the top 10 wheels. And there are some tactics you can use when you're a rider like Chloe to protect yourself. So, for example, as they go up Christmas Tree Ridge, if Chloe starts the climb at the beginning of the peloton, she can drift back through and put less pressure on the pedals than the other riders and still by the top, still be in the bunch, albeit at a different position. That'll save energy and allow her to conserve for the sprint finish. A lot of tactics go into trying to climb when you're a sprinter. Trust me. It didn't always work for me, but you've got to give it a crack, right?
You got to try every trick in the book. The Specialised team, the teammates of Matilda Reynolds, right in the centre of the picture. This is one of the Australian domestic teams. They're starting to feel more confident, more comfortable in this world-class peloton.
Well, there's a young star rider in that team, Jaime, who had a great national championships. She came away from Buninyong with the under-23 national champions jersey, and she's been riding very well all season in the National Road Series. This is a team that's been long supported by and raced within the National Road Series, and initially founded by a South Australian, Liz Philippou, and they've had a great series of riders come through that team and race overseas. And then you've got someone like Taryn Heather, who's been on the podium at National Time Trial Championships. She's dabbled in a bit of Ironman 70.3. She's a real calm, sort of reflective rider who can give them a lot of feedback, and a very strong climber. So she'll be able to provide support to some of those younger riders in these closing kilometres.
And I think they've got the best kit in the bunch. They look fantastic. It's really distinctive, and I think as the women's peloton has become more professional, actually we've seen a real change in the quality of the outfits they're wearing and the focus that the teams are putting into the overall branding.
Can we go with the podium?
Sure.
So
let's do it.
Special on the podium. I haven't quite chosen my order yet. Specialised women's racing, Roxsolt, Attaquer, and Trek-Segafredo. They're my
like
top
that.
three.
I think I would swap out Trek and pop in Rally. Bit of an Orange fan.
Don't mention orange to Amanda Spratt. For the last 2 years, she's been on the podium at the World Championships with a Dutch woman in the gold medal position.
Is true. She might go into fetal position and shake back and forth. Let's not do that.
Speaking of colours, Amanda's been asked the question via social media with the Mitchelton-Scott team whether she should change her blue shoes. The blue shoes have been working for her.
Yeah.
Now that she's the national champion, she's got the green and gold jersey on. Does it clash with the blue shoes?
Not at all.
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Goodness, would you put the hex on yourself and take away your lucky shoes?
Go with the blue shoes.
Oh my goodness me.
It's like changing your undershirt. If you wear your undershirt and you win a silver medal at Road Worlds, you're allowed to wash it, but you're not allowed to change it.
Elvis Presley would stick with the blue shoes. Making their way towards the San Remo past the feed zone. The stage today, it got started in Murray Bridge, and Bridie, as a former rower, this is a part of the country which has a great rowing heritage.
Yeah, Murray Bridge is such a great town. It's kind of the jewel in the crown of this Murray area, but it's the oldest rowing club in South Australia, and James McRae, former Olympian, used to row there. So a big shout out to all the rowers. We know rowers love watching bike racing, and they do a lot of riding for cross training.
There's been plenty of rowers that have made a very successful transition. Cameron Worth has been one of the most famous as representing Australia at Olympic level as a rower, riding 2 Giro d'Italias and finishing top 10 now at Hawaiian Ironman.
He's extraordinary, and he gets off the bike in Hawaii every year with a huge lead and then just basically tries to hold on.
And as a South Australian, Amber Halliday, I'm sure you spent a fair bit of time with her, and Amy Safe.
Yeah, I mean, Amber was at the Olympics in 2004 in the lightweight women's double with Marguerite Houston, and then, you know, they're both bike riders actually. Marg's great on a bike, and Amber was as well. Rachel NEYLAN, she started as a lightweight rower, came across to cycling because she saw the success of Amber actually. That was a big factor for her. She really wanted to go to the Olympics and knew that lightweight rowing probably didn't offer the opportunity for her. And isn't cycling better off for that? A lot of talent ID goes into cyclists. People so often ask me, and I bet you get it all the time too, Bridie, why cycling? How did you end up in this sport? It seems like very specialised and niche. But actually, if you break it down, it's not. We all grow up loving to ride our bike, and we learn to ride a bike early. It's just a slight disconnect between, you know, burling around the BMX track and racing as a professional. A lot of the other sports can kind of develop the athletes for us. If we can teach them the skills, well, Bob's your uncle, you've got an Olympian on your hands.
If we go poach them.
Yeah, Yeah, look, I have no problem with that. I think it's a great tactic.
The riders in the black colours, the New Zealand team, down towards the back of the peloton. Number 125, that's Jessie Hodges. Yesterday, she had a mechanical problem, as you can see some of the fire-affected areas here. And each of the regions that the Tour Down Under is going through, they've made it pretty clear we are devastated by the impact of the fires, but we are open for business. Please come and visit. And they are stunning areas, and they do need people to come and visit. The Tour Down Under is doing a wonderful job.
We've seen a lot of towns go to an enormous amount of trouble to decorate their towns in the past, when there's been a lot of time and energy money put into that. But of course, with these areas, it's so important for the race to travel through them, to celebrate them, and to really pay some honour to the people who live there.
54.3 kilometres to go. The peloton is all together as they make their way through the San Remo past the feed zone. Welcome back to the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. It's the Novatech Stage 2 making its way from Murray Bridge to Birdwood. They've been through the one intermediate sprint. It hasn't had a huge impact on the general classification, although Leah Kirschman, she did pick up a small time bonus, which moves her into equal second position, just 4 seconds behind the overall race leader, Chloe Hosking. Matthew Keenan with you, joined by former points race world champion and former Australian road champion, Kate Bates, who won her national title here on the outskirts of Adelaide, and former hour world record holder Bridie O'Donnell. They're making their way out of the feed zone and through some of the areas in the Adelaide Hills which have been sadly impacted by the bushfires. But the work that has been done by the fire authorities and those who volunteer, put themselves at the front line to protect the communities, their work has been enormous.
A huge shout out to all the fireys who have spent their summer protecting our country. You know, I think it's been quite an emotional process, both for the fireys, for all of the Australians, both affected, you know, physically affected, but also those who feel so helpless, unable to contribute. I think it's said a lot about our community spirit, how everybody's rallied, and I'm so pleased to see the athletes riding through these areas and giving back to the community. The Adelaide Hills are open for business. Woodside, which had a real struggle through that fire season, you know, I know that those people will be out on the streets and cheering them on, and that's what brings the country back together, is that real sense of community. And the internationals, you know, I think it gives them a bit more perspective about what it means to be Australian, and I think it's drawn them closer to the race. So, you know, sometimes good can come out of bad.
I had a great chat to the head of tourism for South Australia yesterday, and he talked about how important it was for people, as best they could, to not cancel holidays, you know, months in advance. There's so many places in South Australia and across the country that have been affected, and yet a lot of tourism operators want people to come and visit. They want people to have their holidays there. So this is a way, I think, of us seeing the country and celebrating the people who live here.
Number 12, this is Leah Kirschman. She's up into second position overall. Her teammate earlier today had a chat before the stage got underway, LABOUS, and she's the leader of the Best Young Rider classification, and she said they have a tactic, we've got 3 cards to play, and we're going to target every single intermediate sprint and try and get a little bit of time up our sleeve.
I think what's interesting is in those pictures, they weren't even pedalling. So at the front of the bunch, they are working quite hard to push any pace, but at the back, we can see that the pace isn't on too much because they're literally not pedalling. You know, they are rolling along. The roads through here aren't as dead and heavy as yesterday, which means if they stop pedalling, they do still keep a bit of momentum. But you'll also notice with the UniSA riders, which look like the national team kit with the green and gold band, not too dissimilar to Amanda Spratt's Champions jersey, just a little bit. They've got a lot of water bottles up their jerseys, so Bridie, they've dropped back to their team car and they will take those up to teammates through the bunch, and it saves the energy of the team leaders. I've been in a pickle a couple of times where I've filled my jersey with bottles and then almost gotten dropped and had to ditch them one by one in order to get back up. It's a hard job.
Well, number 12, Leah Kirschman, she has her gaze firmly set on some fast Aussies for this year's event.
I think the biggest contenders, I would look to the Australians. And, you know, we just saw Amanda Spratt kind of dominate Australian nationals, and usually all the Aussies are really flying at this time of the year. Especially in the sprints, I'll be looking to Chloe Hosking as the wheel that you want to look for. And yeah, those would be the main ones.
Well, the good news for Leah Kirschman and most of the internationals is the current temperature is 14.6 chilly degrees.
Sunweb's been a great story actually for women's cycling because they've had a men's team for some time, and then both teams, the men's and the women's teams, won the team time trial at the World Championships, which has only been an event, part of the World Championship program for the last few years, and an incredible outcome for all of the staff that work at Sunweb. We've had a great Australian rider, Michael Matthews, race in that team as well. So they're really investing equally in the riders across both pelotons. They're out here in Australia obviously for the women's race and then the men's race next week. So extremely good science and technology and nutrition and amazing rider depth in both the men's and women's teams.
These are the Astana colours coming up towards the front. They have Alina Sierra, who proved herself one of the contenders yesterday. Sierra currently sits in 13th position overall, 11 seconds behind the race lead of Chloe Hosking. Amongst one of the destinations that the Peloton rode past earlier on this morning is the Monarto Safari Park. It is the biggest open range zoo in Australia, and it spans more than 1,500 hectares, and it's home to more than 50 species, including Australia's largest lion pride and giraffe herds. And the great Phil Liggett, one of the world's greatest broadcasters, he took the opportunity just a couple of days ago to go out there and visit, and he knows safari parks as he effectively lives on a safari park in his off-season in Africa. Even he said it was worth a visit.
Well, he said he loved the rhinos, which was cool, and he got the opportunity to get quite up close and personal with them and describe them as quite beautiful creatures. When you think of the Adelaide Hills, you think about koalas and kangaroos, not necessarily Australia's largest lion pride or giraffe herd. Or did I get that the other way around? Is it lion herd and giraffe proud?
Pride.
Giraffes don't need to be proud, they're too busy being so tall and good looking.
You just momentarily saw number 104, that is Marika van Witsenberg. She got awarded the most aggressive yesterday. More on that in a moment. Chloe Hosking sitting in the peloton. The longer it rolls along like this for number 81, the better it is for her defence of the jersey.
We kind of expected the middle section of the race to be a bit more temperate than the beginning or the end. This is almost the calm before the storm. So this is Chloe's real opportunity to take it easy and to just let her legs relax. But you've got to be careful, because if you go for too long without really putting the pressure on, quite often then when you try to accelerate or try to put a bit more power through the pedals, your legs feel quite dead, like you've poured a cup of coffee into each leg, without the benefit of having the coffee.
Well, Chloe Hosking, she has managed to get 2020 off to a strong start. Here is the winner of Stage 1 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
I started 2020 by winning the Bay Criterium Series in Geelong, and then I followed it up by winning the National Criterium Championship in Ballarat. So I'm pretty happy with the beginning of my 2020. It's been a nice, unexpected surprise.
She's got every right to be happy with it. Unexpected? I'm not sure. I always expect big results from Chloe Hosking.
It's exciting that she gets to wear the green and gold jersey in criteriums. While there might not be a lot of them in the European calendar, she is in an American-owned team, and so in races there's a fair few crits in the US series. That's going to be a great moment for her to line up at a start line and a crit in the US.
When she won that title, Kate, it was a photo finish. It was a tyre width in it. And we spoke to her afterwards, and she said, "My dad always told me, if in doubt, claim it."
Well, yeah, she's got the confidence. I think this week she's in much better form again. I think after the Bay crits, she had a couple of easy days and she was in incredible form at the Nationals. After the Nationals, she's had a couple of days of easier riding, and now she's stepped up another level. She'll be incredibly difficult to beat this week. I don't think that the teams are going to just hand it her way, and I think that it will actually make the race a bit more animated, especially as they belt towards Christmas Tree Hill.
This is the Dolcini Van Eyck Sport team coming towards the front in the white, red and black colours. The rider we mentioned just a moment ago, Van Witzenberg, she wears the red number as the most aggressive on yesterday's stage. We all make mistakes every now and then, and whoever made the decision on the most aggressive yesterday made a mistake. I'm convinced it should have been Brodie Chapman.
Well, I think we're all completely biased. I think that... No. You're not biased. You're not conflicted.
No.
Okay. I think Brodie was terrific, but that was a really fantastic move by her. She went straight after the sprint points.
Yep,
she stayed out alone. She came away with the jersey. She gave a fist bump.
Can she get the faded red number for the second most aggressive?
We could call it an Orca number.
Orca. That's a nice one. That's Nicole Hanselman, and she was in the break with Brodie Chapman originally yesterday. Brodie was just too strong for her. She did wait at one stage and try and ride together with her, but ultimately I think it was the smart move to power on her own.
The reason I think Brodie's was a more aggressive move was that it was at a more significant part of the stage, and she took a bigger risk, and she put the race favourites under more pressure, and she established a bigger advantage.
Maybe we can give her the people's choice. Most aggressive,
like
most combative
at the Archibald, which everyone knows is worth more. Than
maybe we could give her a ham or a wheel of cheese like we won in Italy.
My favourite part of her breakaway yesterday was the fact that as the 3 kilometre to go, 2 kilometre to go, she was still out the front. The corners moved from left to right, and the peloton probably thought, yeah, we'll catch her. And she hung on until that final corner, and that was a testament to her strength and commitment. But it did, in fact, almost disrupt those top 10 riders as they came in.
This is Novatech Stage 2 for the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. The peloton is all together. Earlier on in the stage, there were a few splits as they headed through some crosswind sections. They're now 12 kilometres away from the second of the Zip Track intermediate sprints. It's then on to the Subaru Queen of the Mountain Point, and that tops out, Kate, with 11 kilometres to go. And I get the impression the peloton, they're anxiously awaiting the climbs at the back end of today's stage.
Within the last 20 kilometres, we tend to call it the business end of the race. In this case, that 11 kilometre mark, that's where it really all happens. I don't think necessarily that an individual rider could go over the top of that climb and remain solo through the descent and into the finish. It is quite wide, beautiful open roads, not too difficult for a chasing peloton to get organised. But I do equally think that a small group is very capable of doing it, and both Mitchelton-Scott, as defending from last year with Amanda Spratt, and Rally for Chloe Hosking and a reduced team of 5, they need to remain very, very vigilant at that point.
We know the climb has an average of around 3.8%, but there are some sections that are 11%. But we talked earlier about recon, and this is where recon makes a huge difference. It's one thing to see on a page that an average gradient of 3.9, but what does that really mean? How does it feel? How does it change as you climb up? What are the corners like? So any of the riders who've done recon of Christmas Tree Ridge will be absolutely advantaged.
Tiffany Cromwell, she's one of the locals. She's here. She's riding for the Canyon SRAM racing team, and she has said that today could be more decisive than tomorrow. She knows the course well. She's also made the statement that Amanda Spratt will know what to expect because her coach, Gene Bates, these are his home roads.
It wears you out as well, these long days in the saddle. We comment on the fact that they're not working too hard. Look, they're not even pedalling at the back. But every single kilometre you spend out there, it eats away, it builds fatigue. Amanda Spratt, she's just tucked in nicely with a couple of teammates by her side. That's Lucy Kennedy to the right wearing number 5. We saw Lucy Kennedy on the front row of the start line today and in the neutral zone. To me, that says they're serious because Lucy tends not to love the bunch environment too much. So for her to be really putting that effort in, I think it speaks volumes to their tactics for the day. Gene Bates, their director sportif, he knows these roads like the back of his hands. He would have talked them through every single kilometre. And actually, I saw on Strava this week that Grace Brown was taking a few of the Queen of the Mountains out on recon laps of the course. So they've done a really, really diligent job in being prepared for this. You know, you can't control everything in race conditions, but you can certainly prepare for what may eventuate.
See, that's where Strava can give things away a little. You know, some riders will want to keep things close to their chest and not let that kind of information get out there. But in the same way that a great, confident pre-race interview that Hosking might give can kind of scare your rivals, Brown saying, oh, this is just me taking him in training.
It's kind of a come at me. I've clearly got form, come at me. Here it is.
Well, Amanda Spratt, she moves up towards the front, and for Spratt, there's no place like home, and for the past 3 years, she has owned the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
I've raced the Tour Down Under every edition. I love coming back here for this race. I've won the last 3, so I have plenty of good memories here. For me, it's just a really special time to be an Australian rider in Adelaide. The race is just getting bigger and bigger every year. I've got my mum, dad, family coming down to support me, and you just hear so many people out on the roadside cheering for you, and for me it's just getting better and better every year.
She is the red-hot favourite. She wears number 1 as the defending champion. She's got lots of support here, but the strength of the team, for Mitchelton-Scott, this is a really important race. Sure, they'd like Amanda to win it, but more importantly for them, it's somebody from that team that wins. And you've, Kate, just spoken about Lucy Kennedy. Today is a day where Lucy Kennedy can have a big impact.
She's such a classy bike rider. She's such a good climber. She comes from an athletics background. She was a very good 800-metre runner. When she first jumped on the bike, I would almost have described her as a set of lungs on a bike because she was exceptionally talented. She clearly had the engine, but she hadn't quite come around with the tactical side and even the confidence and the skills within the bunch. But she's just developed tremendously. You know, quick learner. She's really taken it on board. Mitchelton-Scott, winner chicken dinner by signing her, you know, and I think they signed her when some of the other teams wouldn't have even known her name, and they probably regret that.
It was a Moneyball moment for the Mitchelton-Scott team. She had a heartbreak moment in 2019. She was set to win a stage in the Giro Rosa. The celebration started at around about 2.5 metres too soon, and the great Mariana Vos came over the top of her. Sleepless night that night, but her strength of character, she bounced back, and a little while later on, a couple of months later, she won the Classica San Sebastian. Fantastic result. Speaks volumes of her character.
It does. You get a great hat too when you win the Classica San Sebastian.
You get the Basque hat.
Fantastic. But look, she will not be the first or last rider to have celebrated early or made a celebration error, and that's the hard part, isn't it?
The great Eric Zabel has done it.
Yeah.
He's made that mistake. He won the green jersey at the Tour de France 6 times.
You only do it once, right?
Alistair Donahue, great paracyclist, came in to win, you know, was winning the Rio 2016 Paralympics road race in his classification, celebrated a bit too early, crashed, and someone else overtook him.
But I actually think that for Lucy it was a bit of a moment because she was quite concerned that that would be career defining for her.
Just making their way past the Amy Gillett bikeway. Tragedy from 2005. What has come out of that tragedy is great work in terms of improving rider safety.
And infrastructure, awareness, you know, just the riders out on the road, the 1 metre rule that they've lobbied very hard to implement. So drivers must take at least a metre, if not a metre and a half, when passing. I think it's a great initiative. You know, we miss Amy dearly. These are the kinds of races and the kinds of roads that we would have seen her really excel. I think she lives in the hearts of not only our generation who rode with her, but also through the younger riders, because they just see the legacy that she's left.
Incredibly difficult for you because you were so close to her and in Europe at the time and very close to her at that moment. How proud of you to see what has become of that and her legacy? Oh,
exceptionally proud. And the rider I think of a lot in reference to that is Amanda Spratt, because she was a first-year senior in Europe at the time. She was on holidays in Italy and in a small village. And when it all happened, the rest of us were together on the other side of Europe, and she was alone. She rallied, and at that moment, the sport lost quite a lot of women who decided that actually for them they didn't want to be in Europe away from their families, they wanted to be at home. And that was a real turning point for Spratty, you know, and it turned into what was a very passionate decision for her to follow a sport she loved. And so I love seeing a decade on Amanda standing on the top step of the podium, because I also think that a lot of what she does for Amy too.
We're making our way towards the next of the intermediate sprints. That's in around about 7.5 kilometres. Bridie, another one of the great elements coming out of the Amy Gillett Foundation is the scholarship. This year the scholarship holder is in this race. It's Sarah Gigante. She's the current Australian time trial champion. Last year she won the road race. She's only 19 years of age. And in 2008 she got the perfect score in her final year at high school. Amy would love to know that she's the rider this year that carries the scholarship.
Gigante is an incredible recipient of this scholarship, but we have seen some very famous names over the last decade who've received the scholarship. Amber Halliday was one, Rachel NEYLAN was one, Lizzie Williams. Amazing riders who either had come across a talent transfer or who were identified as being really exceptional with potential and have absolutely thrived in an environment either in Varese or then at the ETC in Italy with the national team, providing opportunity for them to be in the peloton with amazing leaders and showing them how things are done. So that has been the commitment of both Simon Gillett and the Amy Gillett Foundation to support riders individually, to look at the growth of safety, and we applaud them for it.
41.6 kilometres remaining at Novatech Stage 2 as the peloton makes its way from Murray Bridge to Birdwood in the 2020 Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
One of the riders that we saw on the front just before, a rider from Tibco, is a Dutch rider by the name of Nina Kessler. She's got a great history. She's in her early 30s and very well-decorated track rider. She's won national titles in the Madison and the Omnium. But most recently, and I find this incredibly curious as definitely a track or road rider, she's the European champion for beach riding. It's a thing, beach riding. So it's essentially cyclocross, but they do it all on sand. Oh God, that would be so tough.
The weather, it is 19.3 degrees. Not the temperature that you're racing down towards the beach, but I'm sure the weather's probably similar to that when she won those titles.
I actually think she won it in winter. So winter on a beach in Holland, can you imagine?
Yeah, I can. Sideways and cold. And 15 kilometres per hour. At the start of the race, a lot of the riders spoke about the potential for crosswinds causing some splits. We saw some action early, but that's very much calmed down.
For this Novatech Stage 2, you'd notice that it's almost an L shape, and so as they were heading from Murray Bridge across and heading west, they absolutely had crosswinds, and that's where we saw all that excitement and adventure with the echelons, where the bunch gets pushed to one side of the road. Now they're essentially heading north, so they have a tailwind. It's why a lot of them aren't pedalling very hard at the back here. They're being assisted along, and as you said before, psychologically, they're all preparing for the sprint and then the climb.
Kate, as the peloton does somewhat drift along, waiting for that next phase of the stage to start, as we see Sarah Gigante down towards the back of the peloton, there is that old vibe within the peloton that the longer it goes along gently, the more brutal the end of the stage is going to be.
Oh, then you're really just waiting for it then. I think it becomes a real mental game. At the back of the field, we saw en masse the red jerseys of Sunweb. It's been really encouraging, both in stage 1 yesterday and today, to see them all really rallying together. It's clearly a very good tactic of theirs, kind of strength in numbers. Chloe Hosking, their team Rally haven't done quite the same. They've had 1 or 2 riders with her looking after her today. You know, there are a few more in numbers. I think at this stage for Rally to be in such numbers on the front with Chloe sitting there in third wheel, they must be expecting something coming up.
Well, they're 5 kilometres away from the intermediate sprint. Are they planning on getting Chloe the 3-second time bonus?
Absolutely, that's what they want here. She wants to minimise any losses up over the climb, so if she can take another 3-second time bonus at the sprint and some more sprint points, it's a win-win for her.
We've seen Simon Gerrans in the past win this race in the men's event based on time bonuses.
I really think it's a race within a race. I'll probably say that a dozen times between now and the finish. But these intermediate sprints, they can really wear you out. I mean, when there's 2 or 3 per stage, it's not just about taking care of yourself and preparing for the finish. They really need to do everything. Rallier on the left in the orange, Sunweb on the right in the red with Leah Kirschman. I think that Kirschman definitely thinks this will come down to time bonuses. Chloe definitely needs to consider that.
Panning out across the peloton, the fight is on now for positions towards the front. The rally team of the overall race leader, Chloe Hosking, there to the right-hand side of the road, drifting up alongside them, but trying to keep the powder dry. Trek-Segafredo, and they're looking to set up Lotte Hentala once again for the intermediate sprint. And Ruth Winder, the American national champion, she's never too far away either.
You can also see him team specialised in that teal, I think we could call it. They're riding there for Matilda Reynolds, who was 3rd overall on the stage, and we heard from her a little earlier.
Hentala is the rider in the blue jersey alongside Chloe Hosking. So Chloe Hosking amongst those in the orange is 3rd in line, and then just to her left, that is Hentala, who was 2nd on the stage yesterday, and she's in equal 2nd position overall, just 4 seconds behind Chloe Hosking.
Hentala kind of got a front seat yesterday of how fast Chloe's acceleration was. No other rider got to witness it quite as strongly, and I don't think that plays into the favour of Hentala, because
she felt the wind as she went past.
There'd be a bit of intimidation. You know, she would definitely question her ability to jump over Hosking, and by even shadowing her, perhaps she's just looking at sitting on and taking 2nd.
So how does that influence her strategy if you've said maybe sit on and take 2nd, but surely she wants to win? What would you advise her to do to get the better of Chloe?
Depending on how her legs are feeling, it's possibly not worth the energy to even try. So I think that you accelerate if you feel like you can do it, but you've got to save a bit of energy, especially if they're going for the overall stages. I mean, you're not really winning if you're taking the intermediate sprint but then don't have the energy to finish it off. Maybe that's a harsh assessment, Bridie, I don't know.
I think Hentala can also rely on the fact that there are other riders that want to make up some time and get some sprint points. So Hentala needs to not be the lead out for Hosking. Hentala needs to almost be on Hosking's wheel and try that as an alternate approach, I think.
2 kilometres to the intermediate sprint, and the race is shaping up. Even Mitchelton-Scott on the left-hand side of the screen, the black with the yellow helmets, they're negotiating their way towards the front. Bottom of the picture, middle of the road, the Australian national champion Amanda Spratt is not wasting energy as Sunweb in the red colours take up the pacemaking.
Now this is a great shot of what a sprint train might look like. We don't often get these incredible images of women's professional racing, so you can see Sunweb all lined up, and what will happen is some other trains will form. Trek-Segafredo have 2 riders to the front there, and Raleigh have 1 rider there in front of Chloe Hosking, who's in the white and orange jersey.
The fact that they're on completely different sides of the road, one to the left, it's a bit of a fork here, it indicates to me there's not a lot of wind. Otherwise they would definitely be hugging in closer to the other side of the road and taking advantage of hiding from there. So wind isn't a factor, but they're reaching quite high speeds. They run into some of these sprints around the 50 to 60 kilometre an hour mark. That is fast bike riding. They cannot sustain that for the entire day, and that's why the Sunweb team, that's why they have 6 riders, because they need to share the responsibility and the pacemaking.
It is a team time trial drag race as they head into Birdwood with the Zip Track Intermediate Sprint at the National Motor Museum. In the left, in the red colours, it is the Sunweb team for Leah Kirschman. At the back of that train in white, that's the leader of the Best Young Rider classification, Juliette LABOUS, as the overall race leader. Chloe Hosking is negotiating her way towards the front. She's run out of teammates and she's been shuffled back.
I think it's notable. Chloe is dropping back. She's now bottom of screen, and Sunweb are really taking advantage of this. They've still got 6 riders up there. They're increasing the pace. That's Chloe up now in 5th wheel.
And just behind her is Hentala in the blue colours. LABOUS is in the whites. Sitting in 3rd position is Leah Kirschman, the Canadian from Sunweb. She's the rider that the Sunweb team are doing all the work for. In the white and blue colours, Lauren Kitchen has got herself into a strong position. Also, Grace Brown is there for the Mitchelton-Scott team. Surely Gracie Alvin isn't too far behind her. Sunweb in control, still a fair way to go in this zip track intermediate sprint. It's Kirschman who they're doing the pacemaking for.
This is a really long lead out for the women's sprint team. Sunweb, they are not dropping the ball at all, accelerating out of the seat, forcing the pace. The gaps are opening up, but Hosking and Hentala tucked in on the wheel of Kirschman there.
Kirschman now goes. Chloe Hosking sticks with her. Hentala coming around the outside in the blue. Kirschman with the points, or is it Hosking? It is Kirschman who gets there by a whisker. A photo for second and third. That was desperately tight. And a first look for the peloton at the approach to the finish line.
And then the local pretty much according to...
Great dress rehearsal for these riders. They're going to be coming round again here in 34 kilometres time with the exact same approach.
An opportunistic attack off the front from Tiffany Cromwell, the Aussie favourite from Stirling in the Adelaide Hills. This is her style. This is great timing. She literally knows the roads like the back of her hand. The peloton, they've responded. They know not to let someone like Tiffany go.
They know that she knows. So
There's
they
a lot
know,
of knowledge being shared, that's for sure.
So they know to go when she goes.
Yeah, I mean, she would be a beacon to watch. If Tiff gets nervous, you know that something is coming up because she does know these roads so well.
Here's another look at the sprint. Chloe Hosking, did she go full gas or save her energy?
I think she went full gas because she's here, she's quite conservative. She's accelerating and following Kirschman's wheel. But the changer is when Hentala accelerates up the left-hand side and Chloe picks it up a pace. She does drop a bit to the back when she realises she won't get past Kirschman. But there was a moment of aggression, Brody. I wish we could have seen her face when she could feel Hentala from Trek coming up beside her, and she just gave it a bit more grunt. That's so like trademark Chloe.
I don't know if she probably didn't give the same kind of level of passion as she did to win the stage yesterday afternoon. I think it was about safety. Also, there's a bigger gap between her and Kirschman in this sprint points.
And after the attack through that intermediate sprint, it was Canyon Tram, courtesy of Tiffany Cromwell. Those colours, once again, have gone to the front, and that's the team that is going on the offensive.
Ella Harris there from Canyon Tram. So this is great. Canyon Tram need to take an opportunity. They might be in one of those teams that Hosking said yesterday didn't do anything. So great for them to get a result today.
Through the second and final zip track intermediate sprint, we are down to the final 34 kilometres. The race is heating up.
An emergency is the absence of choice.
Mommy?
Oh my God. The crazy chaos of life. So when the storms rage, we call out to the light up ahead.
911, what is your emergency?
Mommy! Get away from the water! Get away from the water!
The new series event, 911. This February, only on 7.
I know you're coming back. I know.
honestly didn't know what to expect because I've never been to Worm Adelaide. I would say make sure you have a lot of time to hang around because there's so many things that you can discover that you've never heard of. So I think it's just like, yeah, just have time, be open and walk around because you'll see a lot of things you've never seen before, and that's what's great about Worm Adelaide, yeah.
So far so good, loving it. It's a great mix of people. Very eclectic music from all around the world. Love it.
It's the stuff that you don't know that's there, and that's what makes a difference.
Welcome back to the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. It's the Novatech Stage 2 as the peloton make the journey from Murray Bridge through to Birdwood. Matthew Keenan with you, along with Bridie O'Donnell, and we're joined by three-time Olympic Games gold medalist Anna Mears. Anna, yesterday was the day for the sprinters. Today they will have the task ahead of them, but Chloe Hosking, she's put the challenge on the table before the stage got underway. She said there's a climb at the end. If you want to drop me, good luck. Go and try and drop me.
Absolutely. I love a little bit of confidence and attitude like that, especially from a sprinter. So anything can happen really in the final kilometres of this stage. I'm quite excited to see how a lot of the riders are going to respond, especially with the Subaru Queen of the Mountains so close to the finish and the final sprint. Tiff Cromwell, we saw her on the move already, starting to make some moves, a local who knows the roads really well. She said if people haven't done the recon, expect a few surprises.
Amanda Spratt, she's not a local, but she has a local advantage because her coach Jean Bates is from Adelaide, and they have done some recon.
They're very organised and very professional about the way they approach this, so they would no doubt have a very important plan. They've got great climbers in Grace Brown, Lucy Kennedy, and we know Jess Allen's the kind of rider who might drive it into the base of the climb and keep things really high-paced.
Anna, they've just gone through the intermediate sprint. Leah Kirchmann, she won the sprint. Chloe, confirmation from the photo, she was in second position. So now in terms of the general classification, with the two zip track intermediate sprints that we've had so far, it's Chloe Hosking still in the overall race lead. Leah Kirchmann is 3 seconds behind, and Lotta Henthaler is at 5 seconds behind. Time bonuses can be all the difference in this race.
Absolutely, and we're talking, you know, the women are going to be riding hundreds of kilometres each day, and it can come down to a 1 second win in the end. So these time bonuses are really, really critical. What I noted there in that zip track sprint was that Chloe was actually really quite close to the barriers, so she had nowhere to move on the right hand side, and then she got boxed in by the Sunweb lead out rider of Leah Kirchmann in front of her. So really she kind of position wise wasn't quite a good execution for her in that sprint. And I think if she can get over the Subaru Queen of the Mountain with the main peloton, she'll correct that for the bunch sprint if she can get over that climb.
When I think of positioning and I think of the onboard cameras we've seen with you when you've been racing in the Kieran on the track, just how aggressive it can be when riders are coming up on either side of you. And if on a track, obviously, you've only got one way to go. So it must be quite an amazing feeling to not know where you can move and to be as fast as you are when you're moving. Incredible experience, yeah?
And it can also be quite eye-opening for us as sprinters ourselves to get through safely a gap that we even think might be a bit tight. We saw last year at the opening stage of the men's Santos Tour Down Under, Viviani, I don't know how he got between a rider and the gap leading into Port Adelaide for the win on stage 1 last year. So yeah, a lot of it's a judgment call for spatial awareness too, not just positioning, but you know, being able to look ahead of the race and actually control your decisions without hesitation as a sprinter.
And Bridie, as you referenced yesterday, Robert McEwen, he's famously said, I don't see riders, I just see gaps.
confidence is everything, isn't it? You know, belief that you can. And I know I've been in bunches where riders come past me in those closing kilometres when you're really full gas.
We're moving into the next phase of the race. Mitchelton-Scott now put themselves onto the front. Let's take a look at what has happened so far in the Novatech Stage 2 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. It all got underway in Murray Bridge with Chloe Hosking wearing the leader's jersey with just a 4-second advantage at the beginning of the day. That has since been reduced to 3 seconds, with the Canadian Leah Kirschman making the most of the zip track intermediate sprints. Making their way out of town, it didn't take too long before the action heated up. And once they got to the crosswind section, we saw Mitchelton-Scott along with Trek-Segafredo and the rally team move themselves up towards the head of the peloton, partly to see if they could cause some damage, but primarily to make sure they stayed out of trouble.
Absolutely, when you get such an exposed area with crosswinds coming through the peloton like that, and we saw some of the riders speak about it before this stage actually started, they wanted to put it over in the gutter. They wanted to be able to put some hurt into these legs and try and create some splits within the peloton, as we see here.
This was Emily Herfoss, the winner of the National Road Series last year, going on the attack. She was soon joined by Anastasia Chercina from the LABTC team. And as they headed through the zip track intermediate sprint, it was the Russian Chercina who managed to hold on. She collected maximum points, and then the peloton, they soaked up Emily Herfoss, and it was Leah Kirschman who led them home for second place and getting another 2-second time bonus. She is out for bonuses.
She absolutely is, and Team Sunweb are leading the team's classification. You can see here now in their lead out for the second zip track intermediate sprint. Kirschman was very definitive in getting across that line, and Hosking, as you said, Anna, was slightly in not an ideal position with Hentala coming up on her left-hand side. So these three names are the ones we're going to be repeating over the coming 24 hours, and definitely for stage 4.
Absolutely. You actually saw there too, Chloe Hosking actually had to stop pedalling momentarily because she overlapped the wheel of Leah Kirschman in front of her as well. So she'll be out to correct that next time around. But what the Subaru Queen of the Mountain climb will do just 8 kilometres from the finish, it will take some of the punch out of the legs of the pure sprinters. So it may favour a slightly reduced bunch sprint coming into the finish, or perhaps even just level it out a little bit for more of the punchy, more classic riders.
The race has completely changed complexion now. The intermediate sprints there behind them. There's time bonuses at the finish line, but Mitchelton-Scott, they don't want to leave it up to time bonuses. Right, it's been worth noting that Amanda Spratt has not participated in a single intermediate sprint as yet, and there's been 5 of them across the first 2 stages.
I know, showing no interest at all, and yet coming into the finale yesterday when things were getting a little bit, possibly a little bit dangerous, she was positioned really safely at about 8th or 10th wheel in the final corner. But this is a definitive move as well. We've got Gracie Elvin, Jess Allen, those incredibly strong riders for Mitchelton-Scott here supporting Spratt, who's sitting in 5th wheel, and now what it's done is string this whole bunch out. These are people who have been dropped off the back. A great young rider, Sophie Edwards, who might have been in a bad position, and now that wind and pace with these rolling hills as they go from Kumaracha to Kersbrook, this is an area of the road where if you're not paying attention, you can lose a wheel.
Sophie Edwards from the UniSA team, one of the riders eligible for the young rider classification. She had a tough day yesterday as well, where she conceded 3 minutes and 55 seconds. Anna, this you can put down to a great learning experience.
Absolutely, and the opportunity afforded to young Australian riders, particularly with the UniSA-Australia team, it's priceless. You cannot get an opportunity to ride in an international field like this and get an understanding of how that peloton works. But you know, what will be interesting for me, for the Mitchelton-Scott team, who we see active on the front, really starting to take control of this race, is from the National Championships. In the interview with Amanda Spratt post-race, was that she said, it was the first time I've been the solo captain in that race. Normally Mitchelton-Scott like to play a few of their cards. I wonder if they're putting them all their eggs into one basket here this time.
That is the exact question that I put to Amanda Spratt at the press conference on Wednesday, and she said, oh no, we've got multiple cards to play. And it was one of those answers that made you say, oh yeah.
Really, girlfriend? You can see this back of the peloton here. The beauty of driving the pace in the front the way Mitchelton-Scott are doing is, firstly, it's about confidence and control, but you're also then preventing riders like Tiffany Cromwell and others to get up across, and they've got a huge tailwind, so it's going to be really fast, and they want to hit the base of that climb in the best position, and Spratt will attack, no doubt.
And there is Amanda Spratt. She's sitting in 3rd position. They do have cards to play here, though. Lucy Kennedy is a brilliant climber, and Grace Brown, she was fantastic on Sunday at the National Championships, picking up the bronze medal.
She was very, Amanda Spratt was all praise for her teammate, Grace Brown, for the role that she played there. On any given day, either of those riders could win the national title or even a Pro Tour ride like the Women's Santos Tour Down Under, as we see Mitchelton-Scott's team really starting to, put the screws into the peloton, really, and it's starting to stretch it out, and a lot of the legs starting to hurt now.
Georgia Williams is being dropped. Jessica Allen has done a great job. Lucy Kennedy has drifted back ever so slightly. It is Spratt in 2nd position. Grace Brown is just behind her. Mitchelton-Scott riding. They're spending a lot of energy, but the other teams are both under physical pressure and psychological pressure.
It's a great move, and also what we're seeing is because it's through this valley and so undulating. I mean, there's a rider of the calibre of Jess Allen who's done her job now for the team. But the nature of these roads, winding, you can see some wind, could be from the amazing propeller of the helicopter, but it's absolutely having an impact on the race. It means that the number of riders who can hold on to even just the base of the climb will be reduced, and that makes things safer for Spratt. It makes things safer for some of those other GC contenders, but this is probably playing the favour of a rider like Hosking. She's such a good wheel holder, isn't she, Anna?
Yeah, she's very savvy, she's very smart, she's put herself at the front of the peloton once Mitchelton-Scott were up there as well, and she put it to them, you have to get rid of me. It is on the shoulders of Mitchelton-Scott to get rid of the pure sprinters, to be able to enable Amanda to have as much time and opportunity to get a break from the peloton, or at least get some distance between her and the sprinters who are collecting all the time bonuses thus far.
The captain of the UniSA team, Rachel NEYLAN, she thinks that the 2020 Santos Women's Tour Down Under serves up some interesting dishes. The plate is now on the table.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the 4 days will bring. I think the stages are all pretty evenly spread out. It's quite a different tour to last year, I would say. There's a lot of opportunity for diverse riders to have a go and to win stages, and I think it should be really interesting for the overall this year.
Well, the race is being torn apart by the Mitchelton-Scott team. They're doing huge damage. The Kiwis being distanced, so too some of the teammates of Spratt. We've seen Jessica Allen, Gracie Alvin also going out the back door. But this is all part of the plan.
We're not even on the official climb yet. There's still 11 kilometres to go to the climb, and this is absolutely incredible how this race has been blown apart. And I don't know if many of these riders anticipated that this is how it was going to go.
Chloe Hosking won't be happy with this.
No, Chloe Hosking won't be happy with this, but also, I think she also had it in the back of her mind that this was a potential. I think this is potentially also what Tiff Cromwell was alluding to, that if people hadn't done the recon work, that it wasn't just the lump of Christmas Tree Ridge, where the Subaru Queen of the Mountain is coming up, but it's these little lumps and bumps leading into it as well, where they could really get some attacks in.
This is huge damage that has been done. Number 12, that's Leah Kirschman. She is currently sitting in 2nd position in the general classification. She's now calling her teammates in the red Sunweb colours around for support, and behind her is number 81. You can see the ochre jersey, the orange colours of the race leader, Chloe Hosking. She too is isolated.
So the group at the front has been dramatically reduced, and we saw it with the earlier images that there was still Gracie Elvin, Grace Brown and Spratt there right at the front, safely protected, and I can assume Kennedy will be as well, one of the best climbers in that team.
Before the stage got underway, Tiffany Cromwell said that on paper, tomorrow looks like the decisive day. I think it could be today. She could be right.
Absolutely. Mitchelton-Scott have got the desired effect that they were after from making these moves and putting the peloton under so much pressure. This stage can be where the race is won and lost, and Mitchelton-Scott really going out, putting it under a stronghold to get their team rider Amanda Spratt in that ochre jersey.
5 riders now at the front. We can see a Mitchelton-Scott rider at the front there. Amanda Spratt's in 4th wheel in the National Champions jersey. There is a Sunweb team rider in 3rd. So 3 Mitchelton-Scott and 2 other riders. And now you can see this sort of decimation of the peloton, and everyone will be fighting for a wheel to try and make contact again in the next 10 kilometres before the climb.
They need to get there well before then, before the base of the climb, then to try and settle things down, to try and recover, then to try and survive the climb, then to survive the descent, then to make it through to the finish in Birdwood. There's a lot to happen in 21 kilometres.
Well, a good free ride here for the Sunweb rider.
And Ruth Winder is there, the American national champion. She was pre-picked as one of the big favourites, a challenger for the general classification. She is there. Lucy Kennedy is also there. She's driving the pace at the front. It's Grace Brown who sits in second last position at the back of the group.
Certainly no obligation by this Sunweb rider in the red jersey to do any work in this team, given that 60% of the group are Mitchelton-Scott. So a great ride by Ruth Winder from Trek-Segafredo, teammate of Lotte Hentala, and another strong performance. We're just waiting to get confirmation on the number of that Sunweb rider there in fifth wheel.
It looks like Liane Lippert, who's at the back, the young German rider. At the very least, this will enable her to inherit the Best Young Rider jersey, the UniSA Best Young Rider classification. She's riding well. She can ride here defensively, Anna, because her teammates are behind her, and she's got a whole host of Mitchelton-Scott riders in this move.
Absolutely, and what's interesting here is Amanda Spratt's actually doing some work on the front, which I would have anticipated she would have lent on her teammates a little bit more to perhaps allow her some legs to attack up the Subaru Queen of the mountain climb. So what card are they going to play?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you. That's your job. What do you read into that? It can be one of two things. It is a sign that all three of us have got a card to play on the climb, or I'm so confident in my ability to deal with everybody in this group, I'm going to work and make sure we distance the others.
Or option C could be, let's do as much as we can to consolidate this gap that we've gained. So if everyone does some work, if she works as the national champion, it might be more likely to get Ruth Winder and the Sunweb rider. Say, all five of us are doing some work, let's consolidate this gap that we have over the chasing riders.
But if you're in the team car for Trek-Segafredo and you have Ruth Winder in that group, isolated from Trek-Segafredo, outnumbered by the hometown favourites, what's your advice?
Oh, gosh. Really, you have to pick and make your decision when you're going to make your move, because the riders, of the calibre of the riders in this breakaway, are not going to make it easy for riders like Ruth Winder to be able to get away. So she needs to be very smart and select as to when she's going to make a move and what that is going to be.
We spoke to Ruth Winder before the race started, and she talked about stage 2. She's excited about it. So I don't know if Trek-Segafredo have done some sneaky recon. We haven't seen their names on any Strava QOMs, but I would absolutely be watching Ruth as someone to attack up this climb.
And a few of the riders from that team, they've been in Australia for a couple of weeks already, and we've seen with the Sunweb team, they've had a few riders over in New Zealand preparing for this event, but the chase is on. This is not over. This gap has not consolidated as yet. This is the second chasing group. The disadvantage that the chasing group has is there's not a lot of teams with strong representation, so how do they form the alliance to get working well together? That is the big question. Roxsolt Attaquer at the back of this group. There's looks like it might be Jaime Gunning potentially in that group for the specialised team. Tipco at the back as well. Shara GILLOW from FDJ sitting in third last position.
Now they've been quiet. We obviously saw a great performance by Brodie Chapman yesterday, but we've got some strong riders in that team, Lauren Kitchen and Shara GILLOW, both of whom have performed very well over the summer. So a good position for Shara to be in, but she's certainly not quite had the form we've seen her have in the past. Second rider there as well, I think, is Rachel NEYLAN, so the captain of that UniSA team, and then the Canyon SRAM rider is number 23, Ella Harris. So we've seen her performing well over the last half an hour as well.
And Juliette LABOUS is there, number 13 in the white jersey, is the leader of the Best Young Rider classification. It is Shara GILLOW who's made the move for the FDJ team. The American who was there for Tipco, that is Lauren Stevens. And at the back of the group,
Peter Mullens.
It is Peter Mullens for the Roxsolt Attaquer team, the former Australian road champion. That is a good working group. Can they possibly make it across? They're going to have to work well together. It is confirmation that it's Jaime Gunning, the Australian under-23 champion, who's there for specialised women's racing.
Yeah, well, Rachel NEYLAN before, when they were all strung out single file, really started to hand signal and encourage these ladies to start working together, because that's going to force the front five riders to really be on their game as well. There's they can't rest on their laurels now. They really have to commit to this move and really bring it in for the finish.
This Zip Track Stage 2 has just absolutely blown everything apart. It's so exciting to see how the stages unfold, but I think that now you can see there's probably 100 or so metres between that front five and the chasing seven. So very, very interesting to see how this is going to pan out and who's doing work and who isn't.
Anna, do you think this leading group survives, or they get caught by the chasers before the climb?
I think this survives, and they put more distance between them up the Subaru Queen of the Mountain.
and we'll find out on the other side of this. Santos Women's Tour Down Under, Novatech Stage 2 from Murray Bridge to Birdwood, and the race is exploding inside the final 20 kilometres. Amongst the leading group of 5, it is the defending champion Amanda Spratt, aiming for overall victory, number 4. Significantly, she has 2 teammates with her, Lucy Kennedy and Grace Brown. Also in the leading group in the red colours from Sunweb, it is the young German Liane Lippert. Also there from Trek-Segafredo, the current American national champion Ruth. They are holding on to an advantage of 35 seconds over a chasing group. Kate Bates, as we welcome you back, this group has stolen the initiative early, and it was Mitchelton-Scott who blew the race to pieces.
Oh, isn't this exciting? Liane Lippert, the Sunweb rider, she was under 23 German champion. She's been German champion in the elite 2 years ago. Really good climber. I think that she's possibly a bit of a dark horse, because I'm not sure that the other riders will know her CV too well. She spent most of her career in Europe as opposed to coming down under and going to the States. She's a bit of a dark horse, but numerically Mitchelton-Scott have a very, very clear advantage. Grace Brown, well, Strava tells us she's been climbing well around this region. We know Amanda Spratt is, otherwise she wouldn't be wearing the green and gold Australian Champions jersey. And Lucy Kennedy, we've already discussed what an incredible climber she is, the former runner, and just exceptional up climbs. You know, she really is beautiful to watch. She looks quite opposite to how I ever watched climbing a hill. Opposite technique. Very smooth and very comfortable. She's doing the lion's share of the work on the front now. I can't imagine Lippert needs to do too much. She's riding in defence of Kirschman still.
Bridie, part of the setting up for this stage for Mitchelton-Scott was yesterday in not doing much at all. Chloe Hosking made reference to that before the stage got underway. It was saying there were plenty of teams yesterday that didn't do any work. They were one of them. Today they're doing it.
Well, they don't have a pure sprinter. We saw Elvin test her legs in the first intermediate sprint yesterday, but absolutely we can see now by that manoeuvre, that they took after the second intermediate sprint there when they went through Guimaracha as they came through the canyon almost towards Kersbrook. So
Spratt is making a move. The reaction is coming at the back of the group. Ruth Winder, she knows the rider to watch. They are approaching the bottom of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains, and Amanda Spratt is putting cards on the table, and she holds a strong hand.
Well, last year it was Mengele's Hill that Amanda Spratt made her move on in quite a similar fashion. The road isn't quite going up quite as steeply as Mengele's Hill did, but Amanda Spratt knows it's a winning move. I think really noticeable here, she wasn't given much leeway.
Also noticeable is it's her two teammates who have been dropped. Both Winder and Lippert have been able to respond, and now we're seeing Grace Brown chasing and returning.
This is not a good scenario for Mitchelton-Scott. This is actually worst case scenario in a group where you have the numerical advantage.
And now the numerical advantage comes to the fore. It's the classic old 1-2.
The old pretend you're getting dropped and then attack over the top.
we saw Grace ride so strongly in support of Spratt on Sunday in Buninyong at the Road National Championships and came away with a very impressive bronze medal. So now, obviously, it's the responsibility of Winder there in the Trek-Segafredo American National Champion jersey and Lippert, the German from Sunweb, to chase both of those wheels.
And in a way, actually, Winder and Lippert have to work together here. They're on different teams, but with two Mitchelton-Scott riders, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know what may happen next. Amanda Spratt will attack. When she comes back, Grace Brown will attack. If Winder and Lippert are just chasing each one.
Spratt goes again,
numerical.
just as predicted. She's off to the left-hand side of the road. The red colours of Lippert from Sunweb. Has she got the answers to Spratt's second attack? There's a bit of a gap opening up for Amanda Spratt. The German is coming, so too is the American, and her Australian teammate, Brown, is being distanced.
They will be Lippert and Winder will be very pleased if they can get it down to one Mitchelton-Scott.
You've used the reference of don't let them leave the island. Another island, Survivor, that speaks of alliances. At the moment, Lippert and Winder need to form an alliance, get to the finish line, and then vote the other one off the island.
A bit of an informal agreement, if you will, to not let Mitchelton-Scott walk away with it. Grace Brown has been dropped off the back here, but as the pace ticks off, which it will, she may come back. Winder, she's not going to let Grace Brown get on easily, but Amanda Spratt won't contribute to that, I don't imagine.
At this point, Amanda Spratt, should she wait? Should she sit on these two, not contribute, and hope that Grace Brown can return?
I don't think she's that kind of rider. I think that Grace is just attacking anyway. This is some really great strategic move by Mitchelton-Scott, but we're not quite on the steepest part of the climb. There's still 1.6 till they get to the actual QOM points, the Subaru Queen of the Mountain.
Number 6 at the front, Grace Brown. She was one of the unsung heroes of the National Championships. A silver medal in the time trial and a bronze medal in the road race. And she hardly got a mention because the time trial was won by a 19-year-old, Sarah Gigante. Understandably, all the fuss was made about her. And then it was a third win for Amanda Spratt in the road race, and she was the one that was feted in that event.
Well, Grace Brown, last year was her first year as a professional. Previously, she came up through the National Racing Series. She's one of the more exciting young riders we've had come onto the scene in a number of years. Last year, she had a bit of a tough season and some hard crashes that interrupted the very steep trajectory she was on from an improvement point of view. She's back, she's motivated. I don't think she can quite match Spratt, though.
Spratt springs through the middle one more time. It's Brown who goes into time trial mode. She just maintains her same rhythm. Lippert and Winder respond quickly.
Now
they don't want to give it any distance at all.
Remembering, this is not a QOM finish. We're not finishing at the Subaru Queen of the Mountain. There's still then 11 kilometres to go. There's some moderately technical descent, and no doubt Mitchelton-Scott will have done some reconnaissance of that. So whilst there's definitely a jersey to come away from this stage for the QOM, it's really important that these riders are all looking at time bonuses.
What's notable at the moment, Kate, is that the American champion, Ruth Winder, is still on the big chain ring. She's ready to go with anything. She does not want to be caught by surprise.
Well, it gives an indicator of how steep the climb is. Often these pictures don't quite paint the picture of how laborious it may be. To be in a big chain ring, well, firstly, on a uphill, you have to be a climber to climb in the big chainring. But also those girls are still moving at quite a pace. A very reduced chase peloton. We no longer have 7, the bunch chasing. They are all back together. I'd say strength in numbers, but that is somewhat neutralised when going up a climb.
Actually, we did see that group of 7. They're still in the background, so Kennedy will have rejoined. They went past the screen really quickly, and then there's that group around 20. So it's quite interesting how spread out it is on the road.
And Grace Brown, she doesn't own a white flag. She is fighting. She won't surrender. She is slowly clawing her way back as they head towards the top of the Subaru Queen of the Mountain point. She's almost there. That time trialling silver medal, that ability, she was the gold medalist last year at the National Championships, that now is coming to the fore.
My legs hurt watching. This is just the hardest moment, and you can see it in her body language. She's even locked out those arms. She's, you know, really rocking and rolling through those hips and putting everything into getting back on. The commitment, impressive. The talent, impressive. She's riding with the world's best here. It's not a national series race, but Grace Brown has well and truly arrived on the international scene. Mitchelton-Scott have whipped her up to their advantage. Ruth Winder and Liane Lippert, I don't think they'd know too well who Grace Brown was. Other than seeing some national results, they wouldn't really know the style of rider she is. And I think to fly under the radar a bit is quite an advantage.
It must be in the interest of Liane Lippert in the red colours and the American champion Ruth Winder to work now with Amanda Spratt and stay away from the rest of the peloton and create a gap and at least eliminate Lucy Kennedy, so that reduces Mitchelton-Scott from a team of 6 with a few to watch to at least just 2 to watch.
Well, Liane Lippert is also riding herself into the under-23 jersey, the young rider jersey in this tour, which is very exciting. And the Santos Women's Tour Down Under isn't just an elite competition. There's multiple jerseys involved. The Subaru Queen of the Mountain jersey, the Zip Track Sprint jersey, and the under-23 jersey is really powerful. So look at the gap now they've put between. Grace is clearly, you know, she's expended all her bickies, if you like, and she's not going to be able to bridge across to another attack like this.
The rubber band has snapped. That's what it's like when you're so close. It is a bit of a rubber band. Once it snaps, it's all over Red Rover. Amanda Spratt, not as good for her, but great for the other 2 riders.
Yeah, which makes me wonder, what are the instructions at this point for Amanda Spratt?
I think if Grace is done, then Spratty just has to ride with these odds, because there's no question that if the whole bunch, reduced as it may be, gets back, her numerical advantage is significantly slashed, and I think Grace Brown is done.
Almost at the top of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains, it's Lippert who collects maximum points, followed by Spratt. It's then Winder, but the gap is only a handful of seconds to Brown. She can return. In terms of what this does for the Subaru Queen of the Mountains classification, Liane Lippert yesterday, she picked up 1 point. She gets 15. She now moves into the lead of that classification by 1 point. So at the end of the day, she'll be the UniSA Best Young Rider and the Subaru Queen of the Mountain.
What is really significant about these 3 riders is they're pretty much the 3 strongest teams in the race. Lucy Kennedy, she's now back with the group, but she crosses over next. Jaime Gunning from Subaru Women's Racing. And this group, Rachel NEYLAN, at the back, they're a really strong group of bike riders. They're not too far behind. 10 kilometres isn't a long way to go though, especially with a fast descent. You can't make up a lot of time when you're all going over 60 kilometres an hour.
Well, Cromwell's in that group. We've seen Tiffany take some really exciting risks on descents, and she'll know these roads very well. So
exciting or terrifying?
Oh, well, for me, terrifying. But we know she's going to absolutely attack this descent now with, 10 kilometres to go. It's only going to take them 12 or so minutes to get down to the finish line, or maybe even less. The interesting factor around this group as well, and you mentioned Lippert's history as a national champion and a junior national champion. Ruth Winder is also a really great sprinter. I raced with her in 2012, and she won a lot of criteriums as a junior rider then, and has raced a lot on the track. So there's a lot of top end finish in a small group in that group of 3 women.
1 minute and 21 seconds from the 3 leaders back to the peloton, but there is a chasing group of 7 swelling slightly as they catch the likes of Lucy Kennedy in the middle, and they're not completely out of it. It's unlikely that they're able to draw those 3 back in, but they need to stay on the hammer. They're still fighting for positions. This race can still explode tomorrow to Stirling.
It's been a bit tougher, I think, in some moments than even the athletes have expected. They talk about maybe a reduced bunch, but I'm not sure anybody really expected it to be so reduced that it would be Amanda Spratt. I think they thought it would more be a breakaway of riders who took the opportunity to go up. It's been a bit different to that. Those three have ended up off the front simply because they've been the strongest, significantly the strongest, rather than taking initiative and about the timing of the attacks. To me, that makes it a lot harder to potentially chase down because it's not like Brodie Chapman out on her own. It is three of the strongest bike riders in their really comfortable spot out on quite a tough course.
This is Amanda Spratt. She's won for the past 3 years. The American national champion, Ruth now rolls through. She's been on the podium in the past. And this is Liane Lippert at the back, the 22-year-old from Germany, who has herself in a position as the leader of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains classification, looking for instructions from the team car.
At this point, you know, within the last 10 kilometres to go, it's going to get very real very quickly. Now is the time to take a drink, to chat to your team car, to ask for any final instructions. What the team directors will be telling them now isn't too technical. It will be, remember to drink. You know, don't do too much work. It'll be really the basics, because when you're under this much pressure, sometimes it's those basic things you forget to do that can have really devastating consequences to your overall result. Drink your water, girls, and then I think we're going to have a bit of cat and mouse into the finish.
They also often are giving really good feedback around, 300 metres, there's going to be a right turn, there's some gravel on the road.
Grace Brown is within striking distance. There is the gap. At this point, Amanda Spratt is still working with that lead group. I imagine that she'd be pretty happy to see Grace Brown return and make it 2 for Mitchelton-Scott out in front.
I think so, but I think we have to be realistic about how much work Grace has had to do in order to come back. What a tremendous ride from her. I don't know how much help she'll be able to be to Spratt. The next bunch, they've already turned that corner. They're not too far behind. It's saying a minute 15. It looks functionally less than that.
No, that's to the peloton, not to this chasing group. It's a minute 15 to the main part of the peloton. To this chasing group, it's only around 30 seconds. And with that group so close, Amanda Spratt cannot afford to play the tactical game out in front and wait for Grace Brown, because that could result in a whole bunch of other riders coming back into play.
I mean, this is the really exciting part, one chasing another, chasing another. They can't afford to do the cat and mouse thing. I actually find it quite curious watching 3 climbers play the cat and mouse coming into a sprint, but they cannot afford to hesitate at all. And if the 3 of them aren't prepared to work quite well in cohesion, well, we have to think about who is in that chasing bunch behind, how much they want to let Leah Kirschman get back up. That will play into how hard Lippert is willing to ride, same with Winder and Hentala.
And this is the main peloton, which includes Leah Kirschman. It also includes the current overall race leader, Chloe Hosking. But on the road, she's no longer at the top of the general classification. That is slipping through her fingers.
Significantly reduced, but at the front on the left of screen, that's Matilda Reynolds out of the seat. She's doing it pretty tough, but exceptional ride for her to still be in this front group at this stage of what has been a very hard and laborious race.
They're making a bit of ground then on that group of 7 that are just in front of them, and they would be absolutely motivated to make contact again. We know that if it came back together, then Hosking and Kirschman are absolutely standing to hold on to their positions and their jerseys.
Brodie Chapman, number 51, is also in that group. That's the rider who broke away yesterday. At one point had almost a 3-minute advantage. She's now in a position where she's trying to race to get herself in contention for a top 10 placing overall. We return to our 3 leaders. If you have just joined us for the Santos Women's Tour Down Under, this is Novatech Stage 2 from Murray Bridge to Birdwood. Inside the last 8 kilometres, the defending champion number 1, that is Amanda Spratt. Number 35 is the American national champion Ruth Winder, and in the red colours is the new leader of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains classification, that is Liane Lippert of Germany, and she has not put a foot wrong. The 22-year-old could be the revelation of the race.
Oh, she's got some really great mentors in the team. They've come down here really well prepared, and from kilometre 1 of the Zip Track Stage 1 yesterday, they showed they were here for business. They didn't just turn up and want to participate. It's the first time that the women's Sunweb team have been here for the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. They take a lot of pride in what they do. They join the men's team out here who race in the men's Tour Down Under. I've been excited by what I've seen so far. It's not just one rider. All of them have been really impressive.
They've put in a great team effort. They do that on the men's and the women's team, and it is one cohesive unit. It's not a men's team or a women's team. It's the the Sunweb team. What I found notable at the Subaru Queen of the Mountains point was that Amanda Spratt didn't contest it at all.
Absolutely, she allowed, or there was that gift, if you like, or you take it. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the overall. And this is the final last pinch uphill until they descend completely down into Birdwood. Remembering they've done that finish before. They did it in the Zip Track Intermediate Sprint number 2 just 34 kilometres ago. So they know the run into the finish, and there's fewer of them. You mentioned earlier, Kate, around that idea of having smaller, less experienced sprinters, if you like, or who are clearly very good climbers, then contesting for a 3-up sprint. If that's what we get to, that could be one option. Do you think those other 7 are going to make contact again?
I actually think at this stage, if the 3 of these riders work together, they can stay away. Where they might get in trouble is if they do start to hesitate, they do start to play that cat and mouse game. There is a place for that, absolutely. But when you have 6.5k to go, when you've only got a small advantage relatively over quite a motivated chase bunch, you have to be careful.
And the recon is crucial because the road book never tells the full story. This is an 11-kilometre descent to the finish. That didn't look like much descending to me.
No, and I think that plays into the Australians' hands, but particularly Mitchelton-Scott. They've really worked very hard to do a lot of recon around here. We also have to consider that Amanda Spratt is a bit more experienced than the other 2. We've got a 22-year-old in Lippert and a 26-year-old in Winder. Amanda's had a few more years under her belt and in the peloton, and she knows how to race. Chloe Hosking, well, she's got a bit of a grimace on her face, but she's working hard. This is not looking like a downhill section, is it?
No.
And Matilda Reynolds there as well, equally as laboured.
And 133 from UniSA, that is one of the young rising stars of Australian cycling, Ruby Rose Mangannon, who was second in the Australian Criterium Championship behind Chloe Hosking. I'm impressed with her climbing in this group, one of the youngsters.
She's had such a great summer, and she's been racing on her bike from a very early age. Very experienced and very strong on the track. What I'm really enjoying at the moment is looking at the facial expressions of a lot of these sprinters. They're absolutely adamant that they want to make as much ground up as they can. So Reynolds, Intala and Hosking working their asses off.
That's sadistic of you. You're enjoying it from the comfortable side of the fence.
Thank you very much. I am.
Body language gives a lot away. The tongue out, that's a fairly strong giveaway that they're suffering somewhat. But also, Chloe Hosking was sitting back on her seat, heavy gear, really pushing away.
5.5 kilometres remaining. Amanda Spratt taking on a little bit of water, adjusting. She knows the approach. She's getting ready for destination Birdwood. There she is rolling through at the front wearing number 1. Back in the colours as the Australian national champion. She likes Olympic years. She's won in 2012 the national title, 16 and now 20.
She's obviously on form, but we haven't seen these 3 riders compete in a sprint against each other. We've seen Winder. She can sprint quite well when in the right position. Lippert, she's won a German national championship. You don't do that if you don't have an acceleration.
And she was 5th in the Madrid challenge, which is pancake flat.
So we know she can do it, but the 3 of them together, that's a completely different dynamic altogether. Amanda Spratt will have a bit of pressure on her. She's experienced enough to handle it like an absolute pro, but she would absolutely be the favourite amongst these 3. And she'll need to just take a few deep breaths and refocus and make sure that she doesn't panic in any way or get too anxious in any way, but just really ride a smart ride into the finish and use all the years' experience that she's gained.
And in terms of the current general classification, all of them are on equal time at the start of the day, 11 seconds behind Chloe Hosking, but they're 1:16 in front of the race leader on the road. This is the battle for the ochre jersey out in front.
This is a really exciting finish, and I think we're all very interested to see how these 3 women who, as you say, Kate, have never sprinted against each other in the past. They all bring their own palmares and their history, and they've all, while they're young women, they've all been racing for a long time. So I think that what's going to be excellent is if will a rider attack before the finish, or will they all come in together knowing that 1 minute 15 is nowhere near enough to kind of muck around?
Lippert's 22 years of age. She would have seen Amanda Spratt stand on the podium at the World Championships Championships. I hope right now she's not seeing Amanda as that. I hope she's seeing Amanda as a breakaway companion she wants to be, rather than somebody that maybe she's idolised a bit.
This is the chasing peloton, which contains the current wearer of the leader's jersey. This is the group of Chloe Hosking.
This is the group of pain. We've seen the grimaces on the faces as they continue to ride and try and close that gap. It's a big gap, but you know, it ain't over till it's over.
There is Chloe Hosking, the winner of yesterday's stage, isolated. She's got one teammate with her, but she needs more support than that.
She's desperate to get them working. I think that's what that move was about. She pushed to the front, almost trying to encourage everybody to come on, help me, let's do this. This is where they're at a disadvantage, not having a team of 6. Raleigh only have 5, and only a handful in that bunch with her. This would be a really tough moment for Chloe.
3 litres and 3.7 kilometres remaining. 3 of the pre-race favourites, well, certainly 2 of the pre-race favourites. Lippert was a pre-race favourite for the UniSA Best Young Rider classification. This is the next step up. The 22-year-old, the German, she is showing herself as a potential winner because she has a really strong team around her.
They've been working really well together since even before the QOM points were given out. They're absolutely sharing the turns. We haven't got a sense yet of how comfortable they are, but I think once we get some closer footage, we're going to see how those riders are doing. There's been a bigger gear choice there by Winder. She's riding a heavier gear than the rider of Lippert, but that's also about personal preference.
So heavier gear, we see them pedalling slower. That's often a sign of fatigue. Quite often when you start to get a little bit tired, you'll click down and make that gear a little bit harder just to take the edge off. Pedalling fast can be quite taxing and quite fatiguing. But equally, they're inside the last 3 kilometres. There is every chance that they are just mentally and physically ready to go, waiting for a potential attack. I don't think Amanda Spratt needs to attack. I think that she can go into the finish and back herself to win from a 3-up sprint. But equally, Winder and Lippert are both in a position to feel quite confident about their sprinting ability. That makes it quite exciting. We may as well be watching 3 sprinters all together based on, you know, the equal ability that we consider going into this final.
2.6 kilometres remaining. Novatech Stage 2 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under at the 5 kilometre marker. Grace Brown was still at just 20 seconds behind. Chasing group at 30 seconds, and then another further 15 seconds back to this peloton, which is swelling, and it looks like they're picking up those riders who have been stuck in the middle. Bree Wilson at the back of the group in the Roxsolt Attaquer colours. They go through the 3 kilometre marker, so just 700 metres on the road. The group is still chasing. They are still keeping themselves in with a chance.
This is the result of that incredible work by Mitchelton-Scott. Jess Allen in particular rode her heart out in those part through the valley there to really annihilate the bunch, split everything up, and it meant this set everything now for Spratt, Winder and Lippert.
There's only 1 corner remaining. The final 2 kilometres, it's interrupted by a left-hand turn, 700 metres to go.
We'd say it's less than technical, the finish. What it means is there is no opportunity for these riders to do anything but watch each other and consider the physicality of it. They can't, you know, focus on being the first into the last corner. That just means nothing in this scenario. All 3 riders will come to a point at around the 1 kilometre mark where they'll start to play the game of who's even leading out. At this point, they're still rolling quite well together, sharing the turn and sharing the workload. That will halt pretty soon, and we'll see who really backs themselves and who's confident and willing to lead this sprint out.
That Subaru car that has just gone past them with one of the race officials, commissaire number 2, that's given them a time update that will influence their tactics.
It will. I mean, less than a minute, so they have lost a little bit of their advantage over the main group. They're probably not getting any information about that smaller group, but they've got 1 kilometre to go in this straight line, and then the turn they make left is with 700 to go. So it's a drag race, really, isn't it?
The peloton, number 51, Brodie Chapman. This is the group containing yesterday's stage winner Chloe Hosking, and just around the corner is the group of the chasers that almost survived with Amanda Spratt and co over the top of the climb that was before the climb, before it was meant to all happen.
This has been a lumpy, bumpy kind of race, hasn't it? And definitely one that's going to take a lot of the juice and the energy out of those key sprinters.
Here are the 3 leaders. As you look back down the road, there's Grace Brown still sandwiched in the middle. Importantly, she's fighting to the finish as that keeps her in contention. The tactical game has started, and it started really early.
Well, Lippert is, I'll say, stuck on the front. She doesn't want to be. She was weaving left and right on the road, trying to get Spratt to come through. Honestly, I think Spratt could afford to do the work, but that's a bit of a mental game as well. You know, and now that she is the experienced one, she knows how to play this scenario out. Lippert, she doesn't have to be on the front now because Amanda Spratt has kind of agreed to take responsibility there. But look at them all. They're looking over their shoulders at each other. The cat and mouse has really begun.
Yeah, I mean, Grace Brown would be seeing this as a big motivator. She was around 100 metres behind.
Here comes the chase group. That's the left-hand turn at 700 metres to go for the chasing group. Inside the final 500 metres for the leaders. It's Lippert at the front, Winder in second position, Spratt hurts herself in the ideal position. The cat and mouse game continues. A look across the shoulder. They're assessing the situation. Grace Brown is not out of this. There have been big wins coming from behind in the past, and it could be Brown who does it today into Birdwood. She's closing in. Spratt starts the sprints. Lippert responds in red. Spratt charging over the top. The 3-time winner of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under is stamping her authority on the race. Winder still coming. Spratt holding on. It is Spratt who gets there. Winder in second, followed by Lippert, and then it is Grace Brown. Spratt makes a statement on stage 2.
A gutsy ride from the Mitchelton-Scott rider, and for Grace Brown in fourth. What an incredible comeback toward the end there. We thought she was done and dusted, but Mitchelton-Scott, they take the stage, and well, they've got the numerical advantage overall now.
And the peloton coming through, 24 seconds, they got really close.
Great to see Ruby Rose McGann there taking out the bunch sprint, but there were 7 or 8 riders in between there with Jaime Gunning putting in a last attack before the finish.
And the conversation post-stage, Amanda Spratt, it's not personal, it's business.
It's an acknowledgement, it's a thank you, because none of them would have gotten the results without each other. There's a lot of respect that goes around after such a victory. Breakaways are not successful if the riders don't stay together and don't work together.
Take us through the sprint and the timing of Amanda Spratt.
Well, Amanda Spratt, she knew she didn't want to lead out. She made that very clear, refusing to take responsibility for the speed over Lippert. But when she moved, she saw Grace over her left shoulder and she accelerated. Ruth Winder came around on the right-hand side and Spratt didn't have a moment to hesitate. She wasn't able to open up the big gap that she thought she could initially when she accelerated, but it was more than enough. Winder didn't even get close in the end. Arms in the air, celebrate her first victory as Australian national champion in the champions' colours. A really special moment for Australia and for Amanda Spratt.
Grace Brown in fourth position. Bridie, as you mentioned, just in the distance, Jaime Gunning.
Attacked out of that group of 8 that were chasing all day. These are really important time bonuses, and absolutely as an under 23 rider, she's securing her position on that ladder.
Let's take a look at the top 10 in the stage. Amanda Spratt certainly taking out the stage victory with Liane Lippert, Ruth Winder, I should say, in second position. Liane Lippert in third place. It was then Grace Brown at 2 seconds. Jaime Gunning at 13 seconds. Followed then by Peta Mullens, Rachel NEYLAN, Ella Harris, Shara GILLOW and Juliette LABOUS in 10th position. The time gaps weren't all that big. It was then only 24 seconds the gap to that peloton. That game of cat and mouse at the end, it got nice and tight. Stick with us, plenty still to come from the Santos at Women's Tour Down Under. Novatech Stage 2 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under and has been taken out by Amanda Spratt. Ruth Winder in second position, Liane Lippert in third position. Kate Bates, Amanda Spratt, three-time winner of the race. She has put her authority, stamped her authority on the race today.
Classy, classy, classy. I think, you know, Amanda Spratt came here with a lot of pressure. She's won the last 3 years on the trot, all eyes on her. To be able to take it away in such a dominant style, the race that she rode today, her and her entire team, Mitchelton-Scott, what an incredible team effort. There's only one rider that gets that ochre jersey, but it really does depend on the whole team out there on the road. Just seriously impressive.
Throughout today's stage, making the journey to Birdwood, it was a day where we saw many of the areas in the Adelaide Hills that have been impacted by the bushfires. They have made it pretty clear they're open for business and they want the Tour Down Under to be here. Novatech Stage 2 had got underway with the race lead sitting on the shoulders of Chloe Hosking. After having won the opening stage, she held on to a 4-second bumper over Lotte Hentala, with Leah Kirschman starting the day in third place. As they headed out onto the open roads, the big talking point early pre-race was crosswinds.
That did not disappoint. You know, we saw Sunweb and Mitchelton-Scott really make things very aggressive in that early section where the wind was coming from the left. And the impact that it had on the peloton was quite substantial. It meant that a lot of riders got dropped. We see here now as they're all over onto the right-hand side of the road for the riders. It broke things apart and it would have taken a lot out of the legs.
This was Emily Herfos going off the front as they headed towards the first of the Zimtech intermediate sprints. And responding to her was Anastasia Kirstina, and she managed to go on to win the intermediate sprint. Herfos was caught just before the finish line, and it was Leah Kirschman who led the peloton across to collect a 2-second time bonus and make it pretty clear that Sunweb was here to race.
At this stage in the race, I think a lot of the riders were still thinking it could come down to a bunch sprint and that these intermediate sprint points would make a real difference. Chloe Hosking taking it very seriously for the second sprint as well, with it's like the predictable three, Sunweb, Trek-Segafredo and Chloe Hosking. But it was Mitchelton-Scott who really threw the cat amongst the pigeons. Amanda Spratt tucked in behind Lucy Kennedy and Grace Brown. They had the numerical advantage, a break of 6, represented by 3.
And this was when she made the initial attack to drop her teammate Grace Brown, who just kind of lingered there in the distance. But these three very experienced riders internationally, Ruth Winder from America there in the national champion's jersey, Liane Lippert, who's been a former German national champion riding for Sunweb, and Amanda Spratt, the 3-time winner and the Australian road champion.
They combined well as they made their way towards the top of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains point. It was the young German Liane Lippert who collected maximum points. She now moves into the lead of that classification. Across the top, Grace Brown was still within striking distance, but there was no waiting. They were racing, heading towards the finish line. And as the sprint opened up, it was Amanda Spratt who continued her winning ways in 2020. National title on Sunday, another stage victory in the Santos Tour Down Under on Friday. Spratt taking the win, and with it, she moves herself into the overall race lead.
Some great team celebrations at the end. Just such a hard-fought day. Lucy Kennedy and Grace Brown at the finish there, but let's not overlook Jess Allen. I mean, what a tremendous job she did earlier in the day, as well as Gracie Elvin, to set that up. From start to finish, Mitchelton-Scott really taking the bull by the horns to get that victory.
Spratt, Winder, Lippert on the same time. Grace Brown at 2 seconds behind. This is for the stage. Jaime Gunning, impressive in 5th position at 13 seconds. Peter Mullens, ever consistent, followed then by Rachel NEYLAN, Ella Harris, Shara, GILLOW and Juliette LABOUS rounding out the top 10. The French riding strongly. Ochre jersey for the overall race leader. It's still tied at the top of the general classification. Spratt with a 4-second bumper on the American champion Ruth Winder. The German Liane Lippert in 3rd position at just 5 seconds behind. It's Grace Brown in 4th place. Chloe Hosking, she's at 21 seconds behind. With Sterling still to come, it will be tough for Chloe Hosking, but it's Amanda Spratt who is very much in the box seat.
Amanda Spratt, she'll be so proud to pull on that ochre jersey. Last year she said it was a real honour. Each time she got to pull it on, even though she's won 3 years on the trot now, it doesn't diminish the special nature of it. and to do it as Australian national champion, I think it puts even more of an edge on it.
The beauty of the race in this current scenario, Bridie, is that the teams in second and third place, Trek-Segafredo with Ruth and Sunweb with Liane Lippert in third position, they're both really strong teams who can challenge Mitchelton-Scott all the way to the finish on Sunday.
Well, we know that Spratt came here with an absolute agenda to win this race again, but Sunweb have made it clear that they've committed over their summer to really preparing for this race. And Ruth is motivated. She's got highly talented teammates. So this is shaping up to be an extraordinary battle between three riders and between three different teams.
Jens Vogt is with us, the big German. He's down at the finish line. He's with the stage winner, Amanda Spratt.
Amanda, that was a fantastic win today. It looked like it was a lot of work from the team. Take us through the last kilometers of the race. How did it happen?
Yeah, we had a really strong team plan today. We knew it could be a hard final, but we had to make it hard. So my team, the girls, did an excellent lead out into one of the final climbs, and then Lucy Kennedy just killed herself over those climbs to make it really hard, and we had 3 and 5, and after that it was just Grace Brown and myself just trying to attack and try to get rid of the others. In the end it was me with Ruth and Liana, and yeah, we knew we were just coming into the sprint, and I think on paper normally they're faster than me, but it was just such a hard race. I know I have a really good sprint in that situation.
Talking about a hard race, what was actually the harder part? To make the break in the first place, or actually to win the stage on the finish line? What was actually more complicated for you?
Probably how to win the stage in the row final part, and you're always playing up, weighing up a little bit, okay, GC versus stage win, and how can we, what's most important in that situation. And it was helpful for me that I had Grace not far behind either. I could sort of play that card and then really focus on the stage win in the very, very end there.
With that stage win now, there's a bit of pressure off your shoulders. You already have your win. Are you looking forward now to the overall? What's your plans for the overall?
Yeah, definitely we're aiming for the overall title here. Tomorrow's a really, really tough stage actually around Stirling. We know it's nice to have this win today, but it's definitely not over. I think everything could completely change again tomorrow, so focus on tomorrow now.
Thank you very much. Best of luck for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well, Amanda Spratt, she did have that advantage with Grace Brown chasing. That gave her the chance to think about the stage victory. And with the stage victory, that sets up the general classification. The two go hand in hand.
And some cracking questions from Yenzi. I mean, they were exactly what I was wondering. To them, what was the priority, the stage win or the overall? What was more stressful, to the early part establishing that break or coming into the final with 3 and with the cat and mouse? There's so many intricacies that go into it. And it's not only the whole team. We talk often about the 6 riders that are actually on the track. I was about to say on the field, wrong sport, Kate. But also the team directors back in the car also play a really critical role.
Bridie, she referenced Subaru Stage 3, which takes the peloton from Nairn to Stirling, 109 kilometres. That is a stage that many expected to be the Queen stage on the road. But Tiffany Cromwell, the local, she thought today would be more decisive. Tomorrow, though, there's still so much at stake, with more climbing tomorrow than what we saw today.
Well, we've seen the Ochre jersey move from one Australian champion to another. But now what we're going to look at today for the stage tomorrow through Nairn, down around through Aldgate, 3 times up over that climb to finish in Stirling. These are stages and roads that so many of the riders have been on before. They know some of them. They even passed through Harndorf again and quite close to Echunga where they were just yesterday. So there's a sense of familiarity. There's also that sense of desperation and danger. You know, as you said, it's tight at the top for those top 3 riders. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen tomorrow.
The pre-race favourites, they know that Stage 3 is crucial. Let's now hear what they think about Subaru Stage 3, the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
Stage 3 starting in Nairn, it's one of those stages that's just going to get harder and harder as we get into it. We've got that gravel section before we enter the final circuits in Stirling. 1 extra lap of the final circuit. It's just going to make it really, really hard, and I expect it to be in 1s and 2s by the finish line.
So I'm really looking forward to Stage 3. We had a chance to look at it, and I'm really excited for just the circuit at the end. It's going to be rolly and punchy and quick, and I think that suits us pretty well, and we're really looking forward to seeing what we can do at the finish on the climb.
Yeah, this one ends with a really hard circuit of a pretty long climb near the end, and we do it 3 times, and the finish is at the top. So it's it's going to be a big battle, I think, of the climbers really going for it, and kind of the all-rounders seeing if they can look for opportunities to get ahead of the race.
Stage 3, the Stirling stage, one of my favourites. I was third there last year. It's actually tougher than what it looks on paper. So I think with our 2 finishing laps around the Stirling course, it's going to make for a really hard finish. But as you know, as always, it just depends how aggressive the racing is. But with the high class, I guess, with the world. The higher class this year that we have in the women's race, I think it's definitely going to be quite aggressive, especially since it's the last day before the short criterium stage. So we can expect fireworks in that final circuit up to Stirling. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that stage.
The Stirling community has been so supportive since day one for the women's race. So we are so pleased to be able to go back and feature a sprint and see the Queen of the Mountain jersey sealed there, and then of course the finish. So a really great circuit coming back through there. What's interesting about that road is Aldgate Valley Road, the approach into the finish is quite shaded and quite twisty, and it's very easy for a rider to break away, potentially stay away, out of sight, out of mind, and we just don't know again what we'll see. And I think for me that's the most exciting thing about all 3 of these stages. The opportunity is there for those who choose to take it, and there's several types of opportunity in different areas to attack.
Well, you heard from Rachel NEYLAN. She's expecting fireworks, so too are we. Bridie O'Donnell, who's more dangerous for Amanda Spratt? Is it Ruth Winder, the American, or is it the German, Liane Lippert?
I think it's Ruth. Liane Lippert already has 2 jerseys on her back, and I think that Ruth will be frustrated that she didn't manage to get over the top of Spratt today.
And Kate, what does the Mitchelton-Scott team do to control it and collect Amanda Spratt her 4th overall win at the Santos Women's Tour Down Under?
Mitchelton-Scott, they need to double down. They did an incredible job today as a team, and I think they've got a lot of options. If anybody leaves the island, a Mitchelton-Scott rider has to be with them. If it's Lippert or Winder, Amanda Spratt has to be with them. They've won here before. They know how to do it. Tick all the boxes, check all the things. I think they can do this.
And we'll find out if Amanda Spratt's got an immunity idol or not, as the others try to leave the island. Join us tomorrow for more from the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.